Silence the growing calls from the Democrats for his removal. More than 85 Democrat lawmakers have now called for President Trump to be impeached or removed via the 25th Amendment. And most of these calls were triggered by Trump's threat to bomb Iran and end a whole civilization. That's the post he put out yesterday. Lawmakers Sri Thanedar and Jasmine Crockett sent letters to Vice President J.D. Vance and the cabinet asking to remove Trump by invoking the 25th Amendment to the Constitution.
Hey guys, Hannah is here. So what is happening right now? Washington has crossed into completely uncharted territory. Serious members of Congress are now demanding Trump's immediate arrest, not removal or impeachment, concluding that handcuffs are the only remaining option for a president who has run out of legal defenses, allies, and escape routes.
In Washington, D.C., demonstrators filled the streets for a rally known as Remove the Regime, calling for President Donald Trump to be impeached, convicted, and removed from Oval. The event, organized by the Grassroots Removal Coalition, featured several speakers, including Texas Congressman Al Green, former Washington Metro Police Officer Michael Fannon, and musical performances from the Dropkick Murphys and artist Art to Eve.
We have reached a point where this is no longer about impeachment. We have reached a point where this is no longer about political disagreement. We have reached a moment where Washington is basically starting to demand Trump's arrest. And I mean that literally. Lawmakers are standing on the floor of Congress demanding his immediate arrest. Not removal, not conviction, arrest.
I called for the impeachment of Donald John Trump, President of the United States of America, for threatening judges and for calling for the execution of members of Congress. If ever this president is a reckless, ruthless, lawless person who doesn't deserve the title of President of the United States of America, I yield back.
Arrest demands are coming from multiple members of Congress. Over 30 congressional Democrats are calling on the cabinet to remove President Donald Trump from office over his threats to escalate the war in Iran and target civilian infrastructure. The calls come. Democrats say that the threat, if carried out, amounts to a war crime that would punish the people of Iran for the actions of its government. The 25th Amendment allows for a president to transfer power voluntarily if they are unable to perform the duties of their office. The arrest demands are getting bipartisan support. And the reason is because Trump has basically run out of moves. He has run out of allies. He has run out of legal defenses. And now the only thing left is the question of whether the federal government is going to actually arrest a sitting president. And here is the thing that makes this even more remarkable.
Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has reiterated that the ceasefire changes nothing. She's also accused Trump of making genocidal threats and insisting that he must be removed. Lawmakers like Sri Thanedar and Jasmine Crockett have formally written to the Vice President and Cabinet calling for Trump to be declared unfit for office.
The arrest demands are not coming from fringe members. They are not coming from some obscure representative from a deep blue district who nobody takes seriously. The arrest demands are coming from serious members of Congress. They are coming from members with real power. They are coming from members who are doing serious political calculations about whether Trump is so much of a threat that he needs to be arrested immediately, not indicted later, not tried later. Arrested now, while he is still president, while he is still in the White House. But minutes after Trump's announcement, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez renewed her calls for Trump to be impeached, saying that the Republican president's announcement of a temporary ceasefire changes nothing. She claimed the president has threatened a genocide and that he must be removed from office, whether by his cabinet or the Congress. Others echoed her sentiments as well.
Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, who has voted twice to stop Donald Trump's illegal war in Iran. We have a warmonger in the White House. He has threatened war crimes on an apocalyptic scale and appears eager to commit them. The House and Senate must return to session. The House must pass articles of impeachment, and then the Senate must vote to convict and remove the president, or the cabinet and vice president, with congressional concurrence, must invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Trump. His threats cannot be dismissed as mere rhetoric. This is as grave a moment as the world has faced in the nuclear era.
Senator Ed Markey, meanwhile, welcomed the ceasefire, but added that Trump cannot simply threaten war crimes. He urged Congress to get back in session now to stop this war and remove Donald Trump. Think about what that means. If Congress decides Trump needs to be arrested, if the Secret Service receives orders to arrest the president, if federal agents are told to go into the Oval Office and take Trump into custody, that is a constitutional moment. That is a moment that could reshape American democracy. That is the kind of moment that sounds like the end of a political thriller, except it is actually happening. It is actually a real possibility. It is actually something that serious people in Congress are discussing as an option.
In service to our duty to the Constitution and to our country, the House Committee on the Judiciary is introducing 2 articles of impeachment charging the President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, with committing high crimes and misdemeanors. The first article is for abuse of power. It is an impeachable offense for the President to exercise the powers of his public office to obtain an improper personal benefit while ignoring or injuring the national interest.
The reason this is becoming a real possibility is because Trump has essentially exhausted all other options. He cannot survive impeachment and removal anymore because his party has abandoned him. He cannot win in court because judges have moved against him. He cannot negotiate his way out because there is nobody left to negotiate with. He cannot appeal to the public because his approval is in the basement. He cannot threaten his way out because threats just make judges and lawmakers more determined to move against him. So what is left? What is the only remaining option? Arrest. Arrest before removal. Arrest while he is still president. Arrest as a way to actually stop him from governing. And there are serious constitutional and legal arguments for why arrest might be justified. If Trump is deemed a threat to national security, if Trump is deemed a threat to the constitutional order, if Trump is deemed too unstable to have access to nuclear weapons, then arrest becomes a plausible option. That is what lawyers are starting to discuss. That is what members of Congress are starting to argue. That is the conversation that is actually happening right now. The other thing that is driving this is the sheer desperation of the situation. We are not talking about normal political times. We are talking about a moment where the judiciary has basically rejected Trump, where his party has basically abandoned him, where his base is basically fracturing, where the financial system has basically crushed him. We are talking about a moment where every institution is moving against him simultaneously. And when every institution is moving against you, when there is nowhere to hide, when there is no political path forward and no legal path forward, then arrest starts to look like the only option left. The arrest demands are also driven by something else. They are driven by a genuine belief among lawmakers that Trump is dangerous, that Trump is unstable, that Trump poses a threat to the country. Lawmakers are looking at Trump's behavior, at his threats against judges, at his threats against Congress, at his inflammatory social media posts, at his attacks on the constitutional order, and they are concluding that he is too dangerous to remain president, that he is too unstable to have access to the nuclear football, that he is too threatening to be left in power for even one more day. And that conclusion is driving them toward the idea of arrest. Let us understand what has led to this moment, because we did not just wake up one day with Congress demanding Trump's arrest. This is the culmination of months and months of escalating crisis. It is the culmination of impeachment, of party abandonment, of judicial isolation, of financial collapse, of base fracturing, all converging simultaneously and creating a situation so desperate that arrest starts to look plausible. When Trump came back into office, he had every advantage. He had the presidency, he had his party, he had the courts, he had the executive branch, he had everything. And then over the course of a few months, all of that collapsed. His approval plummeted. His party abandoned him. Judges moved against him. His base fractured. His finances got crushed, and now we are at a moment where Congress is demanding his arrest. That is how fast things can change when multiple crises converge simultaneously. The arrest demands are specifically tied to the impeachment. Once the House passed impeachment, once they voted to impeach Trump, that created a legal and constitutional precedent for further action. Impeachment established that the House believes Trump has committed high crimes and misdemeanors. Impeachment established that there is a constitutional basis for removing him from power. And once that precedent is established, once impeachment has passed, then the conversation naturally moves to what comes next. And what comes next is not just removal. What comes next is arrest. Because here is the legal theory that is being discussed. If Trump has committed high crimes and misdemeanors, if he has engaged in obstruction of Congress, if he has engaged in abuse of power, then those are not just impeachable offenses. Those are potentially crimes. Those are potentially federal crimes. And if they are federal crimes, then Trump can be arrested for them. Trump can be prosecuted for them. Trump can face jail time for them. So arrest is not just a political act. Arrest is a legal act based on potential crimes that Trump may have committed. The other driver of the arrest demands is Trump's behavior since impeachment passed. Trump has continued to attack judges. Trump has continued to threaten investigators. Trump has continued to post inflammatory content. Trump has continued to show absolutely no remorse and no restraint. And lawmakers are looking at that and thinking, this guy is not going to stop. This guy is not going to calm down. This guy is going to keep escalating. We need to stop him. We need to arrest him. We need to take him out of power immediately. And there is a genuine concern about what Trump might do in his final weeks or days in office if he believes he is about to be removed. Will he pardon himself? Will he pardon allies? Will he destroy evidence? Will he use the military? Will he try to incite violence? Will he attack judges? Will he attack Congress? These are real concerns that lawmakers are discussing. These are real fears that are driving the conversation toward arrest. Think about what it means constitutionally if Congress decides the president needs to be arrested. That is unprecedented in American history. That has never happened before. A sitting president has never been arrested by federal law enforcement. But there are constitutional mechanisms for it. The Constitution does not say the president is immune from arrest. The Constitution does not say Congress cannot demand the arrest of the president. So legally, arrest is possible. Arrest is plausible. And that is what is driving the conversation. The arrest demands are also being fueled by the sheer breakdown of normal institutional restraints. Normally, there are people around the president who would say, okay, we need to calm things down. We need to de-escalate. We need to show some restraint. Normally, there are advisors and staffers and lawyers who will counsel caution. But Trump has fired all those people. Trump has purged his administration of anyone who will counsel restraint. So now Trump is surrounded only by loyalists who tell him what he wants to hear. And that makes him more dangerous. That makes the situation more unstable. That makes arrests start to look like the only way to actually stop him. The other thing that is driving arrest demands is the genuine fear that Trump might use the military. Trump has the power to invoke the Insurrection Act. Trump can deploy the military into the streets. Trump can declare martial law. Trump can use federal troops to combat what he perceives as a coup against him. If Trump actually did that, if Trump actually invoked the Insurrection Act and deployed the military, that would be a constitutional crisis of enormous magnitude. That might actually require arrest as an emergency measure to prevent a military takeover. So lawmakers are looking at Trump and thinking, we cannot wait for impeachment to go to the Senate. We cannot wait for conviction. We cannot wait for removal. We need to move now. We need to arrest him now. Because if we wait, if we let Trump sit in the Oval Office while impeachment goes through the Senate, if we let him stay in power during that trial, he might do something even more dangerous. He might invoke the Insurrection Act. He might deploy the military. He might try to incite violence. He might attack the Capitol. He might attack Congress. We cannot risk it. We need to arrest him now. And that is the conversation that is actually happening in Washington right now. Serious members of Congress are having serious conversations about the logistics of arresting a sitting president, about what that would look like, about how it would work, about what the constitutional implications would be, about whether the Secret Service would cooperate, about whether the military would cooperate, about whether arrest is actually feasible or whether it is just a fantasy. The reality is that arrest is probably not actually feasible while Trump is still president. While he still has control of the executive branch, you cannot arrest someone who controls the military and the Secret Service and the FBI and all the federal law enforcement agencies. So, arrest while Trump is in office is probably not realistic, but removal is realistic. Impeachment conviction is realistic. And that might be the precursor to arrest. That might be the legal mechanism that makes arrest possible. Because once Trump is no longer president, once he loses his constitutional immunity, once he loses his Secret Service protection, once he is just a private citizen, then arrest becomes much more feasible. So the arrest demands are probably not about arresting Trump while he is president. The arrest demands are probably about signaling that arrest is coming, that once Trump leaves office, whether through impeachment, conviction, or resignation, arrest will follow, that Trump is going to face serious legal consequences, that this is not going to end with just removal. This is going to end with prosecution. This is going to end with jail time. And those arrest demands are meant to communicate that to Trump, to tell him, you are done, you are finished, you are going to be arrested and prosecuted and imprisoned. Let us break down what the arrest demands actually mean and whether Trump can actually avoid them. The simple answer is probably not. Once impeachment has passed, once the House has voted to impeach, the momentum toward removal is basically unstoppable. And once removal is inevitable, the momentum toward arrest becomes almost inevitable too. The arrest demands serve as a signal to Senate Republicans. They tell senators, if you do not vote for conviction, if you do not remove Trump, if you do not end this now, then Congress is going to move toward arrest. Congress is going to pursue criminal charges. Congress is going to try to force Trump out of office through arrest rather than through removal. So either remove him now through impeachment or watch him get arrested and removed from the White House. Those are the choices facing Senate Republicans. And arrest is probably a worse look politically than conviction. Conviction at least preserves the idea that this was a constitutional process. But arrest looks chaotic. Arrest looks like the system is breaking down. Arrest looks like political crisis. So the arrest demands are actually pressuring Senate Republicans to vote for conviction. They are saying, do your constitutional duty, remove him. Because if you do not, the alternative is worse. The alternative is arrest. The alternative is constitutional crisis. The alternative is the system breaking down completely. The arrest demands also signal that this is no longer just about politics. This is about the rule of law. This is about the constitutional order. This is about basic democratic norms. Lawmakers are saying, we are past the point where we can just let this happen. We are past the point where political negotiation is possible. We are past the point where normal constitutional processes are enough. We need extraordinary measures. We need arrest because the situation is that serious, because the threat is that grave. The arrest demands put Trump in an impossible psychological position. Trump is facing removal. Trump is facing financial collapse. Trump is facing judicial isolation. Trump is facing party abandonment, and now Trump is facing the prospect of arrest, the prospect that once he leaves office, once he is no longer president, he is going to be arrested and prosecuted and imprisoned. That is a lot of pressure. That is the kind of pressure that breaks people. That is the kind of psychological weight that can drive someone to do desperate things. The arrest demands are probably going to accelerate Trump's removal. Because if Trump sees that arrest is coming, if Trump believes he is going to be arrested once he leaves office, then Trump is going to become even more desperate. Trump is going to become even more unstable. Trump is going to escalate his threats and attacks. And every escalation makes senators more likely to vote for conviction, because senators are going to think, we need to remove him now before he does something really dangerous, before he incites violence, before he invokes the Insurrection Act. We need to get him out of power immediately. So, the arrest demands are actually accelerating the removal process. They are putting pressure on Trump. They are putting pressure on senators. They are creating a sense of urgency. They are making it clear that this is an endgame situation, that Trump is running out of time, that removal is coming, and that arrest is probably coming after that. The arrest demands raise the fundamental question of whether the constitutional order can actually withstand what is happening right now. Can a democracy function when a major party's president has been impeached and is facing removal and arrest? Can the system work when that much has broken down? Can we actually recover from this? Or are we in the early stages of some kind of constitutional crisis that might reshape American democracy in fundamental ways? These are the questions that are actually being discussed in Washington right now. These are the conversations that are happening at the highest levels of government. And the answers are not comforting. The answers suggest that we are in unprecedented territory, that we are doing things that have never been done before in American history, that we are pushing the constitutional order to its breaking point. So here is where we land. Trump is facing removal through impeachment. Trump is facing arrest once he leaves office. Trump is facing financial collapse. Trump is facing judicial isolation. Trump is facing party abandonment. Trump is facing the complete and total collapse of his political world. And there is nowhere to hide. There is no escape hatch. There is no way out. The arrest demands are the signal that we have reached the end game, that this is no longer just just about politics, that this is about the rule of law and the constitutional order and the future of American democracy, that Trump is going to be removed from power, and that once he is removed, he is going to face arrest and prosecution. That is where this is heading. That is the inevitable destination. Trump's only option at this point might be resignation. If Trump resigns, if Trump leaves office voluntarily, then maybe he can negotiate some kind of immunity deal. Maybe he can negotiate a pardon from the vice president. Maybe he can avoid arrest and prosecution. But if he does not resign, if he stays and fights, then removal is coming and arrest is coming after that, and prosecution is probably coming after that. So the arrest demands represent the final act, the final escalation, the moment where the system is saying, we have had enough, you are done, you are finished, you are going to be removed from power, and you are going to face consequences, and there is nothing you can do to stop it. There is nowhere to hide. There is no legal defense. There is no political escape. Just the inevitability of removal and arrest and prosecution. This is the collapse. This is the end game. This is what happens when every institution in the country turns against the president simultaneously. What is important to understand about the arrest demands is that they represent a fundamental breakdown of normal constitutional processes. Normally, when a president is in serious trouble, when a president is facing removal, there are orderly legal processes. There is impeachment in the House, there is trial in the Senate, there is potential conviction and removal, and then once the president is out of office, there are criminal prosecutions if warranted. That is the normal process. That is how it is supposed to work. But we are not in normal times, and the normal process is no longer adequate for dealing with the situation Trump has created. Because Trump is not just a normal president in trouble.